God is giving us or reminding us that we have a choice and that we are essentially moral choice makers. That is the title of the human being. The most unique thing about us is not that we're the smartest of all species, not that we're the most noble of all species, even not even the kindest, but we are unique in that we make moral choices. Even angels don't have that quality. And it is a quality. Having freedom of choice is actually a compliment, even though freedom of choice means you can really mess up. You can make some bad choices. That's true. But essentially, freedom of choice is a positive thing. And it really doesn't have to involve good and bad. The arena in which we act out our freedom of choice is itself a choice. You can settle into a struggle between right and wrong and use your freedom of choice there. Or you can settle into a world in which everything is good, but there could be better. And that's where you use your freedom of choice. To settle for good or to be ambitious for something better than good. Now, very often life determines, in other words, divine providence determines which arena you're going to have to use your freedom of choice. So, for example, a person who is in business, and because of the business, he has to spend a lot of time in very unholy environments, not of his own choice. He has to deal with charlatans, with greedy people, with arrogant people, not a very noble society. So, inevitably, the options that he's going to be facing are going to be good or bad, and the bad is pretty bad. But that's where God placed him, must be that that's where he can do the most good. So if you're using your freedom of choice in the struggle of right and wrong, of virtue or sin, well, then that's what your freedom of choice is for. Those who are more fortunate get to spend time in their own environment, the environment of their own choice, among noble people, among idealistic people. And what is the freedom of choice there? What choices does he have to make? Well, one of the choices is to be content with what has been achieved, or to be I don't know, ambitious or driven to accomplish more every day. So, as with any project, you can kind of reach a plateau and you say, okay, good enough. Or you can never be content because goodness is endless. So, this is where we make our freedom of choice. A person can complain legitimately Why did God put me in a position where my choices have to be between the noble and the ugly? Why do I have to live in the streets, in the gutters, and have to refuse ugliness and sinfulness and nastiness? It's a good complaint. So it's a justified complaint. But like they say, it's a nasty job, but somebody's got to do it. So if you were chosen for that job, then you were also given the unique abilities, the unique talents that enable you to succeed at that job and not be depressed or discouraged by the ugliness which you are busy fixing. And that's why there are far more people who are fighting that struggle than the scholars and the tzaddikim who can sit, like Tevye says, if I were a wealthy man, I would be able to sit in the synagogue and discuss the holy books, and that would be the sweetest thing of all. But not everybody gets to have that. Most of us need to be engaging some of the nastier sides of life or existence. And today, even if you're not engaging, you're certainly aware. You're bombarded with the information. So you have to do something about that too. So we're all really engaged in cleaning out or elevating even some of the darkest and lowest parts of existence. But that's also a sign that we are close to Mashiach. The example that is given is that a wine barrel, if you try to clean it out, the hardest part to clean is the bottom of the barrel. So through history, we've been cleaning the barrel, and now we're almost done. So we're at the bottom of the barrel. Well, that's where you find the biggest mess, the ugliest mess. So it's not discouraging, it can be very encouraging. It is the ugliest because it is the bottom final uh, necessary steps. So we've been talking about this for many, many months. The uglier the darkness is, the more distasteful it becomes, but the easier it is to fix it. Because if the ugliness is not convincingly ugly, if there's room for argument and debate, maybe it's not so bad, maybe it's good, maybe it's the best, it's only a matter of opinion, then it's hard to get it straightened out. But when the ugliness is just plain ugly, and everyone agrees it's ugly, it's much easier to fix. So as the ugliness presents itself in its full ugliness, it makes it easier. When it hides and camouflages and pretends to be good, then it's harder. So what we're seeing in the world is ugliness that isn't even apologizing. It's not even trying to clean itself up or give a good appearance. So, although it's very distasteful, it's much easier to clean up. Because when you're sure that something needs to go, then it goes much easier. Which kind of brings us to the subject of tshuva. Tshuva means rejecting some behavior or some attitude that you find yourself guilty of, but you don't like it. So there are many, many degrees of objection. You object to your own behavior or uh, to your own opinions and thoughts that may have been wrong. You can object a little bit. You can admit that it's not perfect, but nothing more than that. Or you can feel that it's really inappropriate and I really should stop, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Then you can have an objection that is much more intense. It is the worst thing in the world. It's totally unacceptable, intolerable. It cannot go on. It mustn't go on. And so things start to change. So the degree of objection will really determine the success of the project. So if you can still justify it, even partially, then the regret is not so deep and the objection is not so total. It's like you haven't reached zero tolerance. If you haven't reached zero tolerance, it's a difficult ideological struggle. You have to keep convincing yourself, no, it's very bad. It's got to go. It's got to go. I must stop. I can't do this. But when you reach a point where the ugliness is so unacceptable that you have absolutely no tolerance for it, well, of course, it's going to go away much easier. So it seems like a paradox, but it's not. The more you object to what you want to get rid of in yourself, the easier it is to get rid of it. So it's not like, wow, if I realized how bad this was, I would be so overwhelmed and so discouraged. No, works the other way. The more convinced you are that this is completely unacceptable, the easier it is to get rid of it. The real difficulty is the tree of knowledge, good and evil. When good and evil are mixed, there's a little good in every evil, and there's a little evil in every good, messy. Then you got to keep identifying which is the good part and which is the bad part. It's very hard to measure, it's very hard to separate them. But when the bad is just flat out bad, it may be a little more embarrassing, but it's much easier to fix because it's just plain bad. It's got to go. And the same is true with goodness. People make New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do this good. I'm going to do that good. And then maybe lasts for a short time, but that's because the good is not convincingly good. You have a good reason to be good, but it's not an absolute must. So you got to keep convincing yourself, yeah, I should do it. It's a very good thing to do. And then that slips away and doesn't have to be. It's not the only way to be good. I don't have to be a tzaddik. And so it kind of compromises the resolution and the commitment. But if it was absolutely good, non-negotiable, you got to do that. You got to be kind. You've got to be disciplined. If you're convinced that it got to be, much easier. So the reason we study Torah and it's make such a big deal about it, you should be studying Torah every free moment you have, because you really should be studying Torah exclusively. No, but you got to eat and you got to pay your bills. So, okay, take some time off and get a career. But really, you should be studying Torah. Why is that so important? Because only the Torah convinces you right from wrong, how right is, and how wrong is. And if you can get yourself convinced, then it's much easier to reject the wrong and to commit to the right. If you enjoyed this conversation or this topic and you're looking for more information, or you want to hear it again from another angle, there's a way to do that. And that is in this book. It's all there. Order it from Amazon. You can read it, reread it, and share it. These ideas, these messages, this approach to life, this approach to Torah, to meaning, and to morals is vital for the world today. And we need to get this message out to the entire world. It is universal, it's essential, it's indispensable. To support this effort, if you want to be a partner in this crime, check out the link and make a donation. It really helps a lot. And thank you in advance.